Those of us who are retired don't have to worry about that. But let's give folks another minute, and then, as always, recording this. I'll post it up again at a time when people might be have more time to actually listen um, live. But that's the beauty of recording them, right? Is you can listen to them anytime you have time to do so. And I'm looking for a way to either on my website or maybe here on my X account, kind of group the ones that go together by topic. I need to look at some of X's tools a little bit better and figure that out. But that's something I have on my list of things to do. That especially these, which are part of a series, to make it easier for people to listen to them. They can listen in whatever order they want, but to see that they're all linked together. So, since we were talking last time about, excuse me, about the autopsy, and we're going to do a little bit of that today too, I thought I would link to the tweet that created this space, the document from Mr. Horn. What is his first name? David? King, is that right?
Yeah, Doug Horn.
Doug Horn. I linked that document where he testified to the Congress about what all the problems are with the medical and autopsy information. I linked that to the last one, but I'm going to link it to this one too once you get started talking, so that since we're going to talk a little bit more about the autopsy issues today, so that regardless of which one you're listening to, you can see that document. It's a fascinating document. Did you read or look at his testimony previously?
Oh yes,
Yeah, I figured
and
you
I've read his 5-volume treatise on the autopsy.
on the topic. Okay. All right. That's why when people try, like, similarly, when people try to argue with me about the Second World War, I'm like, look, unless you've read every book that's been written about the Second World War from every respected historian since 1946, then just don't talk to me about this. Right? Like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I do. So just don't argue with me about shit because you don't know what you're talking about. And you're kind of the same way about this, right? You're like, yeah, I've read it all.
I've read as much as I can get my hands on.
Right,
Yes,
exactly.
um, but people are rightly skeptical
Yeah, I agree.
because a lot of this uh, is new. It doesn't make sense on its face.
What do you mean by that? A lot of it
On
is
the
new.
it um, until I got into it, I had not heard because we had a blackout for 30 years after the Warren Commission as to what. Uh, let's see, where are you? Am I on?
Yeah, you're on. I hear you.
Okay, okay, because I've lost my my ability to. Now I got it back. The mic.
Right.
I couldn't tell whether I was muted or
All right.
not. Okay. Uh,
So yeah, like the Warren Commission was in
it,
the 60s, and then
it came out with a report in
right.
1964 and
Then you had the House.
sealed the entire autopsy.
Yeah.
And then the next public body to examine the medical issues uh, sealed all the testimony again.
And that was in the 70s. So
That was in the 70s.
yeah.
And so it wasn't until um the second half of the 1990s when the Assassination Records Review Board had another look at it, took some more testimony, and gathered a whole lot more evidence and made theirs public. That was the first time. That's 30. It's over 30 years after the assassination. The first time the public had heard any scientific basis at all to argue with the single, the sole shooter hit Kennedy and Connolly with uh, two of his three shots, missed with the third shot. Shot three bullets. One of them killed Kennedy by hitting him in the head, and the other one went through Kennedy's neck and severely wounded Connolly. And That was the official story, and that's all there was. And so when the autopsy stuff came out in the 1990s, it was old. Not many people paid attention to it. It was technical, um, and you really had to take a deep dive to get a feel for what really happened. So, as I say, I don't blame anybody for being skeptical about what I've said. And so, part of my wrap up talk here, we'll try to wrap it up in a way that puts it all in context and gives you, uh, if you want a high level point of view that puts you in a position to argue with somebody, uh, uh, you'll have the ammunition.
Right. Now, we don't necessarily have to wrap up tonight. We wanted to hit the bit more about the autopsy and talk about Oswald. We could do,
Yeah, that's where I was going after
yeah,
this.
we could do
Uh,
another one for sure, at least, in
yeah,
which we kind of do, like high level conclusions. So don't,
yeah. This is going to be a high level wrap up of the
uh
autopsy.
huh.
I'm going to give you some a few additional facts that I didn't get to the last time, and then I'm going to give you my view of what really was going on
With the autopsy
with
part.
the autopsy. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So I will turn it over to you then. I'm working on linking this document from Mr. Horn, and you take it away.
Okay. Uh, we covered it in some detail, the autopsy last time, but what I didn't do was give you my take on a big picture view of what happened and a equally big picture view of the evidence to show that the autopsy was fraudulent. Uh, I'll begin with the simple in this wrap up with the
Let me
simple.
ask you a question, King. So you were alive
Yeah,
when this happened, and I was not. So did
yes,
people question it at the time at all? Any of the autopsy stuff? Was
we
there
didn't know what
any?
it was.
Right. It was
Nobody knew it. All we were told was, this is in the Warren Commission report, was that the autopsy concluded that uh, a single shooter uh, shooting three bullets, one of which missed, managed to kill Kennedy and severely wound Connolly.
mhm.
And the details, the actual photographs, the X-rays, uh, the detailed uh, medical information was not public.
The primary
So
sources
there,
weren't. So for people who
right,
don't know, like I have on my bookshelf here a copy of the Warren Report in book form, which was published back then. You could get that, but pretty much as a member of the public, that's all you could get.
that's all you get, and it went out of its way to make sure that the medical evidence, uh, particularly all the details and all the underlying photos and X-rays, were kept secret.
Right. Okay. All right. So go ahead.
And even worse, everybody who attended the autopsy were sworn to secrecy. They were not allowed to talk uh, under pain of court martial, and that and the formal agreements they were required to sign uh, required them to remain silent for 15 years.
Okay.
Uh, the the members of the casket team who who carried the ornate bronze casket with the body inside into the official autopsy at 8 p.m. This is the second entrance of the body into the morgue. First entrance was at 6:35. Second one at 8 via the formal joint service casket team. That same joint service casket team stood guard over the body when it laid in state uh, before the funeral, which was held Monday, the 25th. And at 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday the 26th, every member of that joint service casket team was told, you know, gotten out of bed and told they were shipping out. And they sent every member of the casket team, the military, uh, each member to a separate place. They sent them all over the
I
world,
mean, that's
but they
that's like, Henry VIII type shit, right? We're
it
we're
is.
just
It
we're
absolutely
exiling
is.
you to Siberia so that you
Yeah,
guys can't
and
get
and no
together and
and no
talk, can't talk to other
no
people.
two of them went to the same
Right,
place.
exactly.
They did not stay in. They did not see each other until the 50th anniversary
Wow,
conference of the JFK assassination,
that's crazy.
and they started. At that point, they started comparing notes.
Right. Now they were young men, right?
They were young
At the
men at the
time.
time,
Yeah.
um,
Doing what they were
but
told, and that was.
and then they were not allowed to talk afterwards, not even amongst themselves. So, uh,
Now I wonder if that would happen now, young men now, right? Back then it makes sense. People pretty much did more what they were told then than people do now.
uh, I would be surprised if now somebody didn't
Mhm.
squawk. Yes, I agree. But I'm going to give you an example of what happened with potential loose lips. Um, not too many years later. Just that's a teaser.
Okay.
But in the autopsy, we've got a divergence of views between the treating physicians at Parkland Hospital in Dallas who tried to save Kennedy's life and the wounds they observed and tried to treat versus the autopsy report signed by three military pathologists, only one of whom was a forensic pathologist, uh, board certified forensic pathologist. But even he didn't have hardly any experience in actual
Hmm.
forensic autopsies. He knew he had book learning, but basically he had a desk job. Uh, i- but if you step back a little bit and look at the testimony of the that was taken by the Assassination Record Review Board, uh, there was not that big a divergence, and I'll tell you why. All of the Parkland doctors who looked saw a big gaping wound in the occipital portion, primarily straddling over into the parietal bone in the back of right side back of Kennedy's head. It was maybe 3 to 5 inches uh, hexagonal uh, in shape and size, and with brain matter extruding out of the wound and dropping out onto the gurney. And nurses saw it. Uh, the Secret Service agents, like the one who jumped on the back of the limo, he saw it and described it the same way. Uh, Everybody in Dallas had a pretty good consensus as to where the large wound was, and it clearly was an exit wound. It was because it looked like a blowout wound. So it was blown out of his head from the inside. You go look at Dr. Humes, the lead pathologist, depositions, and he's asked to describe what did the back of Kennedy's head look like. And he said, well, in the middle of it, around the middle of it, there was a small bullet hole, an entrance wound of about 6 millimeters wide and kind of oblong in shape because it came in at an angle. Uh, Anything else? Nope, that's it. There's no other wounds or defects on the back of his head. Uh, that's a pretty big difference in opinion. Dr. Fink was pretty much the same way. But then we got, I said Doug Horn and Jeremy Gunn, the lawyer, got to Dr. Boswell. Dr. Boswell, in the autopsy, was the only one whose notes survived more than a day, and they still exist. He didn't take notes for the autopsy per se, but he drew some sketches, hand sketches, and those still exist and were not destroyed. Humes, on the other hand, uh, burned his notes in the fireplace over the weekend and burned 3 drafts of the autopsy report also over the weekend. And before he wrote the final version on Monday. Uh, but Boswell's sketch of the wounds is a sketch of the head from above, and he's got measurements shown on the sketch. Uh, it's a wound, a gaping hole, actually, 10 centimeters wide from the back of the head to the front of the head, and 17 centimeters long as the crow flies. But if you count the rounded surfaces of the skull, it totals 19 centimeters. That's about 7.5 inches in length. Um, but it's a 2-dimensional sketch. So
Hmm.
they had him, they came prepared at the deposition with a plastic full size human skull and gave him a magic marker and said, make marks on this skull where the wound started and ended. And he did. And amazingly, the back end of that wound is a big, maybe 3 to 4 inch wide uh, defect in the rear of the skull that drops down to between the ears, which is precisely where the Parkland doctors saw the blowout wound in the back of his head. The only difference is the Boswell 3D sketch on the skull shows that it it extended up over the back of the head, the crown of the head, and then forward on the top of the head to the right, uh, all the way almost to the hairline in the front of his head. And then you read the testimony. He says, "Oh yeah, there was a definite hole in the back of his head, but it extended all the way up to the top." Other witnesses have described the top part of that wound, and what they describe is the scalp would have a place here or a place there with a jagged defect, a jagged hole in it where some brain matter had blown out from the inside. But then connecting those holes were what appeared to be uh, straight scalpel marks that the Humes and Humes himself said he extended some of the fractures in the head during or before the autopsy, uh, to get at the brain to be able to remove the brain. So you remember I started last time with a description by the FBI agents who did take notes and kept their notes and turned them into a FBI 302 memo uh, describing what they saw and heard during the entire autopsy. Uh, they they both agreed that when the autopsy began at 8 o'clock, Dr. Humes uh, sa- said in supposed surprise, uh, "There's been surgery on the top of Kennedy's head." And he even asked people, "Does anybody know what was done at Parkland?"
Hmm.
And you can see this in one of the photographs that is around, showing the top right of Kennedy's head,
Hmm.
and there's a V shaped, in looks like an incision right above Ken at the hairline above Kennedy's right eyebrow. Uh, it's a horizontal V, I'd call it. And doctors who have seen it, including one, Dr. Peters, one of the Parkland doctors, who said that's definitely an incision. Uh, so you not only have everybody at Parkland who saw it, now you've got one of the three uh, primary pathologists at Bethesda who agree there was a large wound in the back of the head. The only issue out there then is how did the is the wound on the top of the head, is that all natural, or is it some of it result of some pre-autopsy surgery? Uh, we'll get back to that in a second. But there were two other doctors at the Bethesda autopsy. One was a radiologist by the name of Dr. Ebersol. He was Navy. And the other was a second year resident at the hospital there by the name of Carney. Both of them testified or gave interviews. And Ebersol actually testified that, uh, to quote Ebersol, when a Kennedy's body came into into the morgue, the back of his head was almost gone,
Hmm.
and including a lot of the brain material. Um, Carney described he thought the back of the head wound was a little bit higher, but it was large, and that was the most pronounced wound he saw when he first saw the body. So now we've got one, two, three of the five Bethesda doctors agreeing that there was indeed a what appeared to be an exit wound at the the back of Kennedy's skull. So what's going on? It's clear from everybody's testimony who attended the autopsy that the main focus was to retrieve bullets. Um, no matter where they came in, they wanted to retrieve all the bullets, uh, obviously to so that they could convict Oswald. Uh, and if there were any stray bullets that came from somebody else's gun, those would and did get buried. Fortunately for history, the pathologists in Bethesda weren't all that, uh, uh, I guess, skilled or versed in forensic pathology because none of them dealt with or knew how to deal with all of the small bullet fragments that you can see, according to uh, experts who have been there, you can clearly see in the original X-rays at uh, in the archives, and those are the ones that I think uh, one of the FBI agents referred to as that gave the appearance of a Milky Way.
Mm.
Just scores and scores of very small bullet fragments. Even Humes testified that it looked like a bullet came in, hit the inside surface of the skull, and just blew into many small pieces, uh, which is not typical of a full metal jacketed bullet. It's more likely that whatever did that, whatever fragmented that way, would have been a soft pointed bullet like you might use in hunting or some other non-jacketed bullet.
A bullet
That
designed to fragment on impact. Yeah.
correct. Yeah,
So you alluded to it, and just because some people might not have listened to the earlier one, you said about prosecuting Oswald. So at the time these doctors are doing the autopsy in Bethesda, Oswald has been captured by the Dallas police, but he's not dead yet, right?
correct. He is killed on Sunday morning. And this is all happening Friday night. So he's got less than 2 days to live, but he's in custody. He's in the middle of a intense interrogation without a lawyer present. Uh, but and the district attorney of Dallas County has announced that later that afternoon that he intends to seek the death penalty for Oswald and for everybody else who were accomplices.
Right. Now, I don't put any weight in that as an evidentiary point because prosecutors always say that.
Yeah.
you know,
Uh,
that's the
Except he was
soothing
known
the
as
population. We're going to get all
he
these guys and string them up. That they say that every time. So,
yeah,
okay.
he had a pretty good record of a pretty good batting average as far as putting people in the electric chair.
Right. But
Uh,
that's not meant what I mean. I mean, prosecutors say, we're going to catch everybody who was involved in this, whether there's anyone else to catch or not. That's just the words that always come out of their mouth. So,
that's true. Uh, so the so thereafter the bullets trying to how do we know that they're getting rid of the non Oswald type bullets that they can pull out? They were using forceps to pull fragments out of the brain because they knew there were a lot of fragments in there. I think the FBI duo uh, heard Humes count out 40 fragments at one point, and they pulled out as many as he could. Uh, put, I think one witness said there was about 10 small fragments in one container. Uh, Another container held four larger fragments that Dennis David signed, who typed and resigned a receipt for the pathologist, um, and at the request of a Secret Service agent. Then the agent took all the copies of the receipt and the typewriter ribbon that he had used to type it with. Those two vials disappeared. They did not make it into the archive.
right.
What did make it was a container containing two two fragments that had some copper attached to it or as part of it. Clearly part of full metal jacketed bullet. Those two were kept.
Okay. All right. So, is there anything else about the autopsy that we didn't
Yeah, one
cover?
thing, yeah, the pre-autopsy surgery is supported by the whole um, two casket, two delivery story.
Hmm.
Um, and I wanted to give you a piece of evidence to support that I didn't give you the last time.
Okay.
The first lieutenant, Richard Lipsey, who was the aide to General Wheel, the general in charge of the Washington, the D.C. Um, arm of the military, arm of the army. Um, he gave his testimony before the House Select Committee on Assassinations, and he said under oath that there was a decoy ambulance, and the decoy ambulance was the one that brought Jackie Kennedy to the front door of the hospital. That ambulance, even though it contained the bronze casket, did not contain Kennedy's body.
And you're talking about, just so people are clear, you're talking about from the drive in the ambulance from Andrews Air Force Base to Bethesda in
Correct.
DC. Now, we're
R-
not talking about Dallas. We're talking about up
At
here.
right, the body was put into that casket at Parkland Hospital. But according to the testimony they took at starting with Lieutenant Lipsey, uh, the body what didn't stay there. It uh, that ambulance was a decoy, and it took the casket team about an hour to meet up with the an ambulance containing that casket with a body in it. In the meantime, a a dull gray shipping casket was brought into the morgue at 6:35 p.m. Uh, and Kennedy's body was removed from the shipping casket, having gotten to Bethesda by way of a helicopter, and then offloaded into a black Cadillac hearse. That's what brought it to the back door of the hospital where the morgue was, and at that point, X-rays were taken, and everybody was run out of the morgue by Dr. Humes and Dr. Boswell and the X-ray technicians, and they were kept out of the morgue for some period of time.
Is there any suggestion anywhere that Jackie Kennedy knew this? If this was true, if they changed the casket configuration, that she was aware of that?
No, she thought she was with the body,
Okay.
uh, but we have not only we have news reports uh, with interviews of the uh, other army or military guard. These are not formally dressed, formal casket team people, but a group of Marines um, put together by Sergeant Boygen, who filed a report, and it's his report that puts the entry of the shipping casket at 6:35 p.m., which gave Dr. Humes and Dr. Boswell uh, probably about 45 minutes to an hour to do whatever they thought needed to be done to create the appearance of a top of the head wound that was the exit wound as opposed to the one in the back of the head, and to cover up a what appeared to be a entry wound in the right top, right forehead, right at the hairline above his eyebrow, uh, which is now obscured by that V-shaped incision that you can see in the photograph. Uh, as, to show you what happens when loose loose lips try to sink ships. One of the witnesses, Dennis David, he was he he was one of the ones who observed the shipping casket being brought into the morgue. One of his uh, best buddies was Lieutenant Commander uh, William Bruce Pitcher, not Pritchard like the uh, governor of Illinois, but Pitcher. Pitcher had been in the Navy since before World War II. He served in World War II and in Korea. And after Korea, sometime in the mid 50s, he got into audio visual technology stuff and made it to the point where he was the head of the audio visual department of the hospital and medical school there at Bethesda. And he taught classes and was in charge of all audio visual stuff. They had a permanent uh, videotape machine in the hooked up in the morgue up near the ceiling. Nobody at during the autopsy saw or knew that it was running.
Mm.
But Dennis David said he was in Pitcher's office. No, in the I'm sorry, in the in the dark room or wherever it is that they
Mm.
do their stuff. Uh, and Pitcher, who was good friends with David, called him over. What he was doing was he had a 16 millimeter film on a hand crank. He was cranking through it, and David said you can make he could make 16 millimeter film out of the videotapes that they made. And this was a 16 millimeter film on a hand crank. He was going through it frame by frame, selecting frames to make still photographs from, or still copies of. And he said, "Come on, I want to show you some stuff." And he showed him some pictures he'd already made and showed him some, let him look in the viewer of the 16 millimeter. What it showed was it was Kennedy's body. This is according to David, uh, on a table with hands, gloved hands, manipulating, turning him around and stuff. And you could see clearly a bullet hole above his eyebrow and his forehead up around the hairline. And you could also clearly see the large blowout wound in the back of his head. Uh, and both Pitcher and David discussed it. They looked at everything he had, and they both agreed he'd been shot from the front. Clearly, he'd been shot from the front and had blown out the back of his head. And that's the last David heard from Pitcher about that. 3 years later, Lieutenant Commander Pitcher is getting close to retirement. And he he tells friends, including Dennis David, that he's been talking to uh, national news networks and other, big city media companies, and he's hopeful that he's going to get a nice paying job there. He made it to within maybe a month or two of retirement when his body was found in a pool of blood in his uh, uh, in the space where he did his stuff, on the floor with a bullet hole in the back of his right ear, and a 38 caliber revolver on the floor nearby. And the Navy declared it a suicide. FBI couldn't conclude, but they did say that they did find this. They found that there were, due to the lack of powder burns
Mm.
around the wound, the the gun had to have been held at least 3 feet from where the bullet entered, and there was a he was a note taker, so he had little strips of paper with notes to himself, and one of those notes was on the floor, and there was a heel print on it that didn't match Pitzer's uh, shoes. So, and his family and all of his friends said there was no reason for him to have committed suicide. He had none of the signs of depression or anything like that. Like that, uh, they all and David Dennis David concluded that he was killed because uh, somebody was afraid that those pictures and film that he'd been working on were about to get into somebody else's hands. Uh, Story doesn't end there. He was buried in Arlington Cemetery, by the way. I'm not sure how far from
Kennedy.
but he still rests there. Years later, decades later, a former Green Beret, um, and I can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me. Appeared out of the blue and told a wild story. He said that he in the six he had joined the Green Beret, volunteered for the Green Beret in on the week after Kennedy was killed, and in training a couple of years later, like uh, Petra was died in 1965, I believe. Could have been 66, but one or the other. He was in training around 1965 in the summer in North Carolina. Uh, it was given commando and assassination training, and during that course, a somebody who showed him identification uh, from the CIA took him aside and asked would he be willing to go on a mission to assassinate a traitor, somebody who's in the military and who's a traitor. He's about to give secrets, top secrets, to our enemies.
Mm. So
And
appeal to patriotism.
and he said yes, except he asked. Then he asked where, and he said, "Well, it would be in Maryland, and the guy's name is Pitzer." And uh, the fella declined. He said, "I'm willing to do it outside the country,
Mm.
but not inside the country." Uh, and that's the last he thought of it until he read a book or read a blurb about a list of people who died mysterious deaths connected in some way to the Kennedy assassination. And the name Pitzer jumped out at him, and it rang a bell.
Mm.
And he read about Pitzer, and he said, "That's the guy they wanted me to kill." And he claims to be a born again Christian. His friends and family told him, "You're crazy. Don't talk like that."
Right.
He said, "I have to atone for it." Um, that's you know, I'm not going to shut up. So to this day, he claims he was he was the first. He was one of the first asked to uh, take first command. I mean, Lieutenant Commander Pitzer out of his misery because he was about to expose the autopsy cover up. He also named another soldier who he thought the guy talked to after he turned the CIA down. This guy, some researchers tracked him down, and he admitted being in the Green Beret, but he denied everything else. He doesn't. He said, "I don't remember anything like that
Hmm.
happening."
Yeah. Probably best not to
Yeah,
remember it.
right. Um, so, unless you have some more questions about the autopsy,
No, I don't about the
I,
specifics.
I,
So that,
I do. Yeah, I forgot one thing. The you last time you asked about the uh, Harper fragment.
yes, the famous Harper fragment of the skull.
Yeah, it was the biggest fragment that survived uh, for a brief time. Somebody found it on the street next to Elm Street uh, the next day, and happened to be a medical student at the Methodist Hospital uh, in Dallas, and his uncle was a pathologist there. So he took it, he took
He
that
recognized
fragment,
what it was.
and
Yeah.
the pathologist at Methodist Hospital examined it, photographed it, x-rayed it, and concluded that it came from the occipital bone in the skull, and it was a recent. Uh, uh, it recently came from an occipital bone because it still had blood and other tissue fragment uh, on it. So they turned that over to the FBI, who gave it to Secret Service, who gave it to one of the doctors at Bethesda, and unfortunately, that fragment, as well as three other fragments that they had uh, in the morgue that night, have all disappeared.
That large piece, according to what I've read about it, disappeared in 63. Like it didn't take long for that piece to go missing.
Correct. Right. Dr. Mantic um, has actually written a book about it, um, and you can get it on Kindle actually. And he looking at the X-ray and looking at the photograph, which does still exist. Um, he said it appears to be from he agrees with the Methodist Hospital pathologist that it came from the occipital region, and he has in his book taken that fragment and placed it shows where on the photograph that still exists of a gaping hole, and shows where that Harper fragment fits into that gaping hole. And he said you can see on one edge of the fragment uh, a gray smudge, which looks like uh, the residue of a bullet fragment.
So, do you want to talk at all about the alteration of the Zapruder film that sort of fits in here? Or are you going to do that a different
I'll have
time?
to do that at a different time because I
Okay,
don't,
so put a pin in
I
that.
don't know what to make of it. Uh,
It's a pretty startling allegation.
it is an allegation, and you've got different people, including those in the community who are fully convinced that there was a conspiracy.
Right.
Uh, Amongst in that community, you've got a divergence of opinion as to whether the uh, uh, Zapruder film has been altered or not.
Horn talks about that in his testimony. So, you guys, if you're
Yeah,
listening to this and you're interested in that, he talks about it a bit in the testimony that I've attached as a reply tweet to this tweet that starts this basis. And so, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you certainly can.
I'm not going to go down there yet because there's a couple more things I want to
Right.
look at
All right.
on
So
that.
put a pin in that. We may come back to this,
Yes,
but it does play into this question of the bone fragment,
yeah,
skull
but
fragments, and so forth. The hole in the
it
back of his
and
head.
the Secret Service was primarily responsible for gathering up things like that,
Yeah.
bullet fragments, bone fragments, and and as well as getting the pictures developed and uh, holding on to the X-rays. And we have many photographs that witnesses say, including the pathologists, uh, were most definitely taken that night that no longer are around.
Right. They didn't make their way into the archives or even
Correct.
the file that the Warren Commission
Yeah.
put together. Yeah.
Uh, the Secret Service also pulled off another heist, I'll call it, uh, considering they were dealing with evidence from a crime scene. Uh, there was one other piece of evidence that should have stayed behind for at least serious examination by the Dallas police that was whisked away and never seen by the Dallas police. I'm talking about the limousine that Kennedy was in. Uh, it was covered in blood and brain tissue and skull fragments and bullet fragments uh, when it got to Parkland Hospital. Uh, while Kennedy was being worked on, they moved the limo to Love Field, and that later that afternoon loaded the vehicle into the Army transport plane that it got to Dallas in, and they took it back to D.C. And put it in the garage where they kept those vehicles at the White House. It never and never did any of the Dallas uh, police or their detective units. Nobody from Dallas ever got to see it, examine it, uh, take samples from it, etc.
Now, that raises a
Uh,
question I ever wondered about before, which is who was the owner of that vehicle? Was it a Secret Service vehicle? Was it owned by the
it,
state of Texas for the governor, or
no, it's a
it
Secret
was
Service
Secret
vehicle.
Service to begin with? Okay.
Correct. They keep them at the White House in a garage, and uh, they're under 24-hour lock and key and guard, etc. Uh,
So
but
that flew down with them that
it
day.
flew down with them a couple days earlier because the Kennedy had been to
Hmm.
Houston and to Fort Worth before Dallas.
Okay.
So the only uh, criminal investigators that had a look at the vehicle were a team of two or three FBI agents who looked at it, scoured it for uh, evidence like bullet fragments, etc., uh, and took a couple of photos, but not not the number of photos you would expect
Mm.
for something that
Boy,
important.
that would be handled
Uh,
so differently now, right? They
yeah,
would.
and they did it at night, like early Saturday morning from 1 o'clock to 1 a.m. to 3
Mm.
a.m. Uh, it was not only do you have the issue of where did the bullet fragments land, uh, the, were was there evidence from the fragments and from skull fragments as to which directions bullets had come from. Uh, there has been no report, a formal report by the FBI along those lines. They did send whatever bullet fragments they could get their hands on. They sent them to the FBI lab
Mm.
for analysis. Uh, and then there was a crack in the windshield, about a foot to the, if you're sitting in the driver's seat, it would be uh, 9 inches or so to the left of the rear view mirror and about at the level of the rear view mirror. And the issue is obviously what hit the
Mhm.
windshield and when,
Right.
and whether it went through. Uh, there were 8 witnesses at Parkland Hospital, including a couple of Dallas police, motorcycle policemen. There was a journalist. There was a second year med student, uh, maybe two journalists who have given statements that they saw a through and through hole in the windshield. Uh, Appeared to be a hole of
At the same
a
place
maybe,
where the crack was, or?
yes, right in the middle of the crack. It was a spider web looking crack, with uh, the cracks radiating out from the hole in the center. Uh, a hole that you could the size of the tip of your little finger, and that appeared to have come from the front. Uh, there is some dispute about that, but because not all witnesses say they saw a hole, so it'd be good to have
Mhm.
a uh, a good forensic uh, 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 inspection of the windshield as to what hit it. Did it make a hole? Was it a bullet or just a fragment? Did it come from the front? Did it come from the back?
Right.
That all those questions. Uh, we never got a report saying
Mm.
answering those.
Right. Okay.
Uh, not a report from uh, a competent, expert in the field. Um,
Right. That makes sense. But you would
what
want
we
that if you were going to prosecute it. You
If you're
might
going to
not use
prosecute it, you
that, but
need
you
that.
want it.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but we don't have that. Um, we do have a report from a Secret Service agent who initially said there was a hole and then took it back. He said he didn't mean a through and through hole. It was
Mm.
a kind of hollowed out type
Mhm.
hole and
Damage of some.
damage. And he said there was a uh, lead residue on the inside of the surface of the windshield, and there was rough feeling on the inside. Um, and Secret Service Director Rowley wrote a letter to, uh, I believe it was Hoover, in January, which
Of 64?
64 might have been December. I forget the date, but it's a lengthy letter describing what happened to the limo,
Mm.
and including a description of damage to the windshield and how they had it replaced by a local uh, windshield replacement outfit.
Hmm.
And a- and they mm, he he said in the letter, it says the outside of the windshield is smooth and the damage is all on the inside of the windshield,
Hmm.
which, if you understand safety glass, that's evidence of it being hit from the front, not from inside the car. Because the way safety glass works, it's the you have basically two panes of glass uh, melded together, and when something hits a windshield like a rock,
Mm-hmm.
it all the cracks happen on the opposite side.
Right. It's designed that way.
It's designed that way. So what he's describing is something has hit the windshield from the front, not from the rear. Uh, they took that back. They changed that story along the way. Uh, so while all this became a great cause celeb amongst the it's a conspiracy crowd. They tried to find witnesses, evidence uh, of what really happened. Is this a cover up, etc.? And there was a lawyer from I forget where he's from, since Ohio or Michigan, one of the two Big Ten states, for, who who located a man in outside of Detroit by the name of George Whitaker. Whitaker had been a uh, manager at the Rouge uh, plant owned by Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, Michigan, back in
Or as the
1963.
Michiganders call it, Dearborn.
Dearborn, all right, Dearborn, and uh, he he was a manager, and he told our lawyer investigator that he got a call the Sunday after the assassination, the day before the funeral, uh, that come in. They had to decide whether to open the plant the next day or shut it down because of the funeral. And a lot of
Mm.
places closed down so people could watch the funeral on the TV.
Right.
Uh, they decided that they needed to open it, so he came in normal hours on Monday morning, and lo and behold, in the uh, part of the plant that dealt with innovations, prototypes, things like that, there was the presidential limo
Mm.
without its windshield. They were fitting it for a brand new windshield,
Okay.
and he asked what's going on, and they showed him the original windshield, and there was the windshield with a through and through hole
Hmm.
in it, with the radiating cracks going from it. That was his story, and he told it to the investigator, the lawyer. Uh, I think his name was Weldon. Uh, made him promise that he would not make it give in, make his name
Mm-hmm.
public or his story public until after he died. So the lawyer kept this
Mm.
promise, but he had him on tape. and you can hear the taped interview um, on I forget, on YouTube, I think, in several places. Um, that and So you've got a piece of evidence there. If the- and his family confirms what he's told the lawyer, uh, that he had told them the same thing.
So if you're interested, unbelievably, they put this car back in circulation at the White House, right? They
Yes.
refurbed it. And, shocking to no one, I would think, Lyndon Johnson was like, yeah, I'm not riding in that. um, but they did. Nixon apparently wrote in it and they put a
Yeah.
cover on it and whatever. But, they put a top on it. And you
Well,
can see it still today at the Henry Ford Museum.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But the somebody else has done a ballistics analysis and concluded that if that is indeed a bullet hole in the windshield that we're talking about,
Hmm.
it lines up with a shot that hit Kennedy in the front of the throat uh, at a certain place on Elm Street, and the shot would have come from the south uh, uh, south side of the overpass.
Okay. And for folks who are interested in this kind of stuff, if you want to just continue to do your own research, there are sites online that talk about sort of how Dealey Plaza looked then and the way it looks now, which is slightly different, of course, after all this time. So you can like go there yourself and see how it looks, but it is different than it was then. And there are guides there that give tours of the events and the book factory and all of this stuff. So, if you're really interested in this and you find yourself in Dallas, then you can go and see for yourself.
So what's going on here with the Secret Service razooing all of the crime scene evidence out of Dallas, with the body being taken to Bethesda, where a quick and dirty autopsy is done, and an apparent, what appears to be an attempt to cover up anything but two shots coming from behind JFK. Uh, what's going on and why? Uh, I'm going to give you a quote from LBJ. He said, this is what he was thinking at the time of the assassination or shortly after. Quote, what raced through my mind was that if they had shot our president, then who would they shoot next? And what was going on in Washington? And when would the missiles be coming? If that was what he was thinking, and he had no foreknowledge of what happened or had no idea who did that, why doesn't he want to know who shot him, who shot JFK, how many were there, and what are the odds that they might shoot him, LBJ, next? And is this really the first shot in a nuclear holocaust? Those, what if those issues were running through my mind? I would want to know everything I could about the facts, wouldn't you?
Yes, but you do have to take into account that Dallas authorities would have certainly told the new president's team as soon as possible that they arrested this idiot, right? And
Right.
who he is and so on and so forth. So it may be that he thought that at first, but then as the information developed coming to him, he decided, okay, that's not really what is happening. It's a lone wacko type situation and we should confine it to that. So I see what you're saying, but I think there are other
You you
possibilities.
you you forgot what his aide Cliff Carter
Mhm.
did. Uh, had called the DA 3 times the night of November 22nd and instructed him to shut the investigation
Right, but
down.
that's
You
after
have
they,
your guy.
that's after,
You have
right,
your guy.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. So they
Yeah.
decided
So I
that's
mean,
all
so
you
this is
need to,
without any investigation. But with plenty of evidence there were other shooters. Uh, Same thing, and LBJ personally did the same thing over the weekend when he told the um, chief of police to stop looking. You know, just
okay, but what I'm saying is that's susceptible of two interpretations. You raise one and I raise the other. Your point is if i- if he didn't know about it, if LBJ wasn't in on it, let's put it that way, um, then he would have a legitimate concern about, is this some kind of the first act in a play to, decimate the country by one of our enemies, right? And so why,
or is this a conspiracy to take out the top of
right,
our
the duly
government,
elected government, including him.
including
Right,
me?
exactly. Okay, that certainly is one interpretation of it. And so if he wasn't involved in it, why wouldn't he have followed up on that? Okay, that makes sense. But my point is once they apprehend Oswald, he may not have those concerns anymore, right? Because
That that's where you lose me because uh, because in our first presentation I gave you uh, uh, summarized statements by witness after witness after witness who saw more than one culprit. It gave you several leads of people getting into getaway cars, of people either carrying weapons uh, or appeared to be lookouts standing beside persons
right,
with
but we
weapons.
don't have, what's the evidence that LBJ was aware of all of that information in the hours
Or
immediately afterward? Because you're starting from
he,
the
he, he
premise
picked he,
that,
he has quick.
wait, you're starting from the premise of what his immediate thoughts were. So that's boom on the spot. And that
eh,
certainly has to have evolved over the course of the day and the weekend, right?
Well, he's in constant contact with J. Edgar Hoover, and as I just said, his aide Cliff Carter is in contact the uh, with the DA in Dallas, and he knows how to get in contact with the chief of police in Dallas
Right, of
because he called
course.
him later that weekend. And the question is, why doesn't he ask? Do you have any evidence that anybody else might have been involved? His answer from the DA would be yes, we
Right. There
do,
is some.
and
Right.
there is some. So that's his answer.
Well, but what you
Uh,
told us that his aide told the DA Wade was basically don't take any leads that take it to the Cubans or the Russians. That's
exactly.
not the same thing as saying don't see if there are other people involved.
I think as it shook out, they said, if not, they either implied or said specifically, you've got your guy, shut it down, don't look any further.
Okay, but that I'm not doubting that that's what LBJ wanted. He conveyed that through his aide. Fine, but there are more than one reason why that could be. If he was satisfied that it wasn't the Russians and it wasn't the Cubans and that it's some other group, maybe he doesn't want to panic the nation. Maybe he thinks it is the Russians or the Cubans, but I don't want the Dallas police. I don't want the Texas authorities dealing with that. We'll have the federal authorities deal with that. So he
That
tells the Texas
that's a possibility.
authorities,
I agree with that.
yeah,
That's a possibility.
right. So there's
Uh,
multiple reasons for that. One of which is the reason you give, which is that LBJ knew who it was who was involved, and so he doesn't want it tracked down for that reason, right? So there's at least three reasons why that could be. Um, and so, but does that prove that there was more than one person involved? No, it proves that LBJ had a certain perspective on it, and the motivation for that he never clarified.
uh, Let me move on, and I'm going to move on by giving you
Yeah.
uh,
Well, are
a part of the
yeah,
conclusion.
are we still talking about the autopsies now? Oh,
No, I'm off. I'm moving off the
well,
autopsy unless you have some more questions.
well, I thought you were going to give us sort of your personal overview of, okay, if you look at the autopsy stuff, and let's include the stuff about the car because that's
Yeah,
related, I think.
yeah, yeah.
That's
yeah.
crime scene analysis, both of those. So what do
My
you think
view
is
is
really going on?
my view is there. This was driven by what they were doing and why all those people were in the autopsy room, all the military brass. They were under orders to answer a simple question: can we lay this on Oswald or a single shooter alone? Can we make that case to the public or to the investigators and shut it down? Or do we have to come up with option B? This was more than one shooter, and here's the story. Option A would be single shooter, no accomplices. Uh, Option B is more than one shooter, uh, but a group of X that did it for these
Right,
reasons.
XYZ reasons. Okay.
Correct. I think I think they were trying. They had to see what narrative they could
Who's
sell.
they?
They being the military, and who they were answering to. It's either the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the new president. They were answering to the people at the highest level of their command because they were under orders. It was clear that the brass in the room from all the witnesses were pretty much directing the autopsy. They were telling the pathologist what they could and couldn't do. Uh, and that came out in the uh, Garrison's trial of Clay Shaw. One of the pathologists, Fink, uh, started to do a procedure that would give him a better insight as to the direction a bullet came from and where it went. Uh, when he started down that path, he was told to stop.
So it wouldn't be improper for the military to want to determine which it is, but what you're saying is that you think they had a pre-existing narrative that they wanted to sell.
That a preferred narrative, yes,
Okay.
yes,
And so in that scenario, the doctors are not in on it. They're being manipulated by the higher ups.
correct. And that view is supported by various witnesses who were present. That it was very much being directed by the some of the officers in the audience at the autopsy,
And you think that directive is coming from LBJ and his people?
either LBJ or the Joint Chiefs or both.
Right. Because sometimes when you have these kind of problems, it's like when we're talking about the Russia hoax now, you know, you have to be careful about attributing people's motives. And also, people are often not careful about saying they'll hold someone responsible for something which has been done by one of their subordinates or underlings, which may not have been done with their knowledge. Right? I learned this lesson over and over and over again. I'm sure you did too as a defense lawyer when you deal with white collar cases. People who are sort of in the middle of the organization often assume that those at the top know a lot more than they actually do. Or they think the big bosses are personally ordering things when in fact it may be someone in the boss's sphere that the middle person deals with occasionally or not at all, but that they get directives from, when in fact the very top people are also in the dark. So, people below tend to assume that people above them have more information and um, have more control than in fact they do. That isn't always true, but it often is true. So, it could be, as you say, maybe the Joint Chiefs are going this way, that you would say, well, LBJ controls them. Okay, but what's the evidence that actually they were doing that at LBJ's behest? There may or may not be any. That may or may not have been, the linkage there. Now, if you've got general officers in this meeting, then clearly, somebody with some seniority is involved in this, right?
Yeah, there is one witness, one of the autopsy assistants, Paul O'Connor, swore in his deposition that uh, General Curtis LeMay, a member of the Joint Chiefs, head of the Air Force, uh, was at the autopsy because he tried to he asked LeMay to put his cigar out, and LeMay blew smoke in his face. Other people, nobody else in whose deposition was taken, identified LeMay as being present. LeMay's aide uh, is heard on the Air Force One radio, calling in, trying to get a hold of LeMay, who's on his way back to D.C. from Toronto. Uh, and he's desperately trying to reach LeMay as Air Force One is in the air heading back to D.C.
Mhm.
So we have one witness who says LeMay was there, looking very smug and smoking a cigar and annoying everybody else in the room. But nobody else confirms that.
Okay.
So take that as for what it's worth.
So my view would be, if some of the things that you're raising and that Horn is raising about the images are missing, right? There's this discrepancy in quite a bit of the forensic examination, so on and so forth. I have not doubted from the beginning that someone or somebody's in the government wanted to cover up, or let's say keep from the people, the precise nature of the killing, right? For whatever reason, which could range from good reasons to really bad reasons. That doesn't surprise me at all. But you can't discount. I was thinking about this morning when I was thinking about talking to you later today. You can never discount that in the midst of, even where you have a bona fide, genuine conspiracy of people who are doing something wrong, you cannot discount side quests that people involved in the conspiracy or attached to it or related to it or next to it, they go off and do other things that then become part of the fact pattern that you have to take into account. That, and sometimes that is what creates things that don't make sense, because the guy who's part of the conspiracy has a side thing that he's doing in addition to the conspiracy that he's part of. So, some of the stuff about the stuff going missing, bullet fragments and images and so forth, yes, you could put that under the heading of this is part of the cover up. But some of it, and maybe all of it, but definitely some of it, might simply be attributed to souvenir hunting, right? And or other kinds of people deciding, well, this just doesn't need to resurface for whatever XYZ reason of their own.
If it's souvenirs hunting, somebody got the mother of all souvenirs.
Yeah.
The brain is missing.
Right. Well, but I'm talking about the bullet fragments, other,
I'm just yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the brain went missing in
in the 60s.
1965, I think.
Right, exactly. Do you think that the brain that they gave Robert Kennedy was in fact the right one? Because it seems pretty clear that, I mean, I'm going on what you're saying and other people, and also what David Horn is talking about. It, from that evidence, it seems clear that the brain that was part of the autopsy and the records is not the right one.
That is not the right one.
Right.
The original, the first, they actually did two brain exams.
Right.
Only the second one made it into the
Right.
report, and the second one is the one that was put into a box, uh, put left with the archives, and that's the one that's gone missing. The first one, Hume testified that he gave it to Dr. Berkeley, Kennedy's personal physician, Admiral Berkeley. Um, and I don't know what what happened then. Nobody really knows what happened after that.
Some things that I've
Although Dr.
seen say that they gave it to the family, that the
Yeah,
family did
yeah.
whatever they wanted
Uh,
with it. Yeah.
he said, but he later, Dr. Berkeley said, the impression was he was going to give it to the family to uh, put put in the coffin
Hmm.
with JFK at the funeral. Uh,
Right. Whether that
Berkeley
happened or
later
not.
said
Yeah.
that he did not do that.
Right. Right. I wouldn't be
And,
surprised if they maybe had a private sort of
yeah,
interment or cremation or something.
maybe so, but the original the first brain exam would have been for the with the real JFK brain, but that's not the one that made it into the report. They did a a follow on exam with somebody else's brain. And by the way, that's a teaching hospital, so they have an inventory of brains.
We would have
Uh,
had donated
yes,
organs and things to choose
correct.
from, which seems
Uh,
totally crazy. But, and
but but
just so
the
people know, there's like a chain of custody problem with a lot of this stuff, even that is in the archives, right? Because a lot of the things they have were not captured by the military or Secret Service, but rather, or they were, and then they were given to the Kennedy family, and then Robert Kennedy, I think. Um, was the leading person on this. They donated items back to the government, but not everything. And they told the government that the things that they withheld were permanently inaccessible to the government. So I'm not saying there's anything nefarious about that. I'm just saying this is what happened.
but the story doesn't end there. Doc later in life, Dr. Berkeley, through his lawyer, sent a letter to, I believe it was the lawyer for the HSCA in the 1970s, indicating that Dr. Berkeley uh, had some information he wanted to give the HSCA because he has evidence that there was a conspiracy. There was more than one shooter. Uh, that's what the lawyer wrote. And when they said, sure, come on in, let's talk. And at which point, Dr. Berkeley called it off and said he's not going to talk.
Right.
Did not want to talk about it, and refused to answer any questions about it.
Right.
And that's where it stood when he died. So let's get on to Oswald. Before I do that, I want to tell you the story of John Martino, who spent 3 years in prison in Cuba after Castro took over. Martino had been connected to uh, mob goings on in Cuba uh, before Castro, and uh, so I'm not sure what his connection to the mob was, but he worked with them. Uh, he was anti-Castro, ended up in jail for 3 years, and got out. I believe it was 62. Uh, Later in life, and he was associated in some form or the other with various anti-Castro uh, activists in the United States, largely around Miami. Later in life, uh, he confessed to a business partner and to another man who was a close friend, and then later, and then around the same time to his wife before he died, that he had been involved in a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, in the conspiracy to kill Kennedy. It was a conspiracy involving the anti Castro Cuban group. His role was very tangential. He called himself a courier. He delivered messages and money, but was never actively involved in the actual assassination. But he knew about it, and he basically wanted to get it off his chest before he died. He said part of the plan always was to uh, blame Oswald as a patsy, somebody who was not involved, but but could be set up as the fall guy for the
So
assassination.
this is an interesting aspect of the whole problem, because whether there was a conspiracy or not a conspiracy, you're always going to have a guy like Oswald. That, like, if you look at the assassinations of all of the presidents that have happened, right, and attempted ones and whatever, this guy always is in the fact pattern. You
So
follow,
let's go to the fact pattern.
you follow what I'm saying? Like, you're
And
going to have a
I agree
Oz.
with you. So
Yeah.
we're going to go to the
Yeah.
right in the middle of the fact pattern. And
Right.
I'm going to start with the thing that ties Oswald first in the minds of the investigators immediately after the assassination. At, at 12, the bullets hit Kennedy at exactly 12:30 p.m. Dallas time, November 22nd. Within 14 minutes, the Dallas police had um, the had a suspect in mind, and they sent out an all points bulletin, and we've got the. Uh, I have not heard the recording of it, but I'm told the transcript that now exists is accurate. Transcript says, be on the lookout for a white male, 5'9", 165 pounds, 30 years old. Uh, Carrying one part. The APB doesn't say anything about weapons, but internally, somebody wrote carrying a Winchester type 30 30 rifle.
Okay.
Did not give any description of any clothing. But that was it. 5'9", 5'10", not 5'9", 5'10", 165 pounds. Wavy brown hair, I think, which isn't Oswald.
So give us a description of Oswald for the.
His description when they arrested him was 5'9", not 5'10", 131 pounds, not 165. Wavy brown hair, 24 years old.
So the age and the weight are off.
The weight is really
Yeah.
off. The height is an inch off, but the weight is significantly off. 131 versus 165 on a 5'9" frame. Uh,
I will say, as a defense lawyer, that it was my experience that the public is not good at estimating height, weight, or age. And so often the initial report of what the person looks like on those factors is not very accurate.
Usually not. That's true. But the Warren Commission found a witness who would say that's a witness who early on gave a description of who he saw in the window uh, with a
That
rifle.
was closer to this than.
It was almost that. His name was Howard Brennan. He said he saw somebody standing in the window of sixth floor corner window of the school book depository, who was 5'10", 165 to 175 pounds, and uh, pointing the rifle out the window. Uh, there was a problem with that. Brennan was uh, sitting on a concrete stoop facing Houston. He was on Houston Street facing the motorcade. The depository building would have been to his left and a little behind him. So he'd had to crank his head over and look up from that position. The bigger problem is he said what he saw was a man standing, leaning against the left side of the window, standing up, pointing the rifle out the window, and pulling off a shot. Uh, Problem was the window was only open to about kneecap level. The bottom of the window was 4 inches from the floor, and the top of the window opening that somebody had to shoot out through was no higher than your knee. So if somebody was pointing a rifle out that window, they would have to be leaning, either prone on their belly or uh, squatting down significantly to get low enough to get the rifle out. So there was no way that Mr. Brennan could have could have guessed even how tall this man was or how much he weighed. And later that day, he did not pick Oswald out of the lineup.
Yeah.
So uh, Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, spent over a year trying to find somebody else who came up with that.
Who fit that description? Yeah.
No, somebody who gave that
Oh, who
description
gave it? Okay.
to the police. They found the police inspector. His name was Sawyer, who got it. And best Sawyer could say is somebody came up and gave me that description and then walked away. And I don't know who he is. I didn't get his identification. I couldn't tell you even what he looks like. Uh, that's the best the FBI could do as to who gave him that description. Uh, Here's the curious part: the description precisely matches the description that the CIA had of Oswald, and it was wrong description. That description was given to him at the time he defected in 1959, defected to Russia. There was another man, a a Rand company employee who defected within days of before Oswald by the name of Robert Webster. And Webster had a description. Other than the color of his hair, it exactly matched that 5'10", 165-pound description that became Oswald's description. And there is uh, another lawyer, coincidentally, um, who has written about this. You can find it online. I'll uh, next session I'll give you the name and site to it. But uh, James Angleton, who kept Oswald's file at the CIA, at the time was engaged in a massive mole hunt. He believed that a Soviet agent who defected, became a double agent by the name of Popov, got arrested and executed on the day that Oswald ended up in Russia. But Angleton was convinced that somebody inside the CIA had tipped off the KGB about uh, their mole pop off. So Angleton was on a heavy duty mole hunt at the time, and one of his techniques, and this is people have written about this, is using what's known in the trade as marked cards. They will put something knowingly false um, in the file to see if that particular known false piece of information gets out, leaks out of the agency, and comes back through some other sources. So he kind of could at least narrow down the source of the leak or the source of the mole. And Oswald's file, at the time he defected, had more than one marked card, one of which was
Yeah.
his description, another of which was several places in the file. The middle name is not Harvey, it's Henry. Another of which is the name of his father. Another one still is the spelling of the street, one of the streets he had lived on. Uh, and these all just, I mean, they kind of jump out at you. They appear to be deliberate, uh, like a marked card. So, and 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 what's what this the writer that I'm relying on here claims that the CIA's physical description of Oswald and the other defector, Webster, were kind of melded, merged together to create a single description of two different people who were defectors and kind of used by the CIA as dangles to sort of get the attention of the KGB in the hopes that ultimately some of this would circle back into the CIA's hands so they can get a better handle on who the mole is. What do you think?
I'm sorry. You asking me what do I
Yeah,
think?
what do you think? To me, it was crazy when I first saw it and read about it. But the more I think about it, and you'll see it come out, it comes to fore late in some later developments, pre-assassination, that are kind of blow your mind.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll wait. I'll reserve judgment for now.
Okay. Um, the interesting thing is, the is what the police did with that description, which was
Hmm.
wrong.
Right.
What they did with it was they used it as kind of the excuse or the explanation for um, Officer Tippit being killed.
Right.
Uh, Tippit supposedly saw somebody who matched that description, more or less. walking down the street, pulled over to ask him some questions, and got killed.
Right.
Um, again, uh, what happened? Does that make any sense if the description is that far
Right.
off? Particularly when you don't have any description of what clothes the guy was wearing.
Right,
But
which is often a better predictor of whether you've got the right guy because people are better at providing that element of the person's look to the police.
right, correct. But on in the same within the same 60-minute time, 60-second time block, that the description went out to all uh, the entire police department. The dispatcher sent Officer Tippett and in his patrol car, and another officer Nelson in a different patrol car to the neighborhood where Oswald lived, where he had his boarding house,
Right.
um, with no explanation. Other, the only thing they've been told is look out for this suspect, and two of these people get sent to Oswald's neighborhood.
Hmm.
The woman who ran the boarding house where Oswald lived, or owned the boarding house where Oswald lived, uh, has testified that not long after Kennedy was killed, there was a police car drive up in front of the house, sat there a second, honked his horn, waited a second or more, and then drove off. Uh, don't know if it's Tippett's car or the Nelson car, but those were the only two, as far as anybody knows, were in the Oswald's neighborhood. Uh, Meanwhile, back at the so the issue is Oswald being framed?
Right. Is he part of it? And that
Is he part?
or is he being framed for it instead? Right.
Because as I said the first time we talked, he had a pretty good alibi. He uh,
Well, I don't agree with that, but okay.
he. I mean, let me remind you. He said he told the cops after he was arrested. He ate his lunch on the first floor of the uh, school book depository, um, 12 to 12:30. The assassination was at 12:30. He he ate there. He ate his lunch there every day. He had walked up to the second floor to buy a Coke, and that's when he was accosted by uh, Officer Baker and the superintendent of the building, Truly. Uh, Truly told Baker this, he's okay. He works here, and they went on up to a higher floor looking for the assassin. Uh, Oswald told the uh, his interrogators after his arrest that he was asked, "Well, who saw you there in the lunchroom?" He said, "Well, there was two black guys, one named Jarman, I think." He said, "I don't know the other guy's name, but he looks like this." He gave him a description. Um, it was the uh, known as the Domino Room, which was where the uh, blacks and Latinos ate, and Oswald uh, ate. Oswald did not. He was a distinct anti-segregationist and let his views on that be known. In fact, when he was in New Orleans as a younger guy, he got beat up for insisting that he would ride in the back with the blacks during the segregation years, and some segregationist whites beat him up.
Mm.
Uh, he hadn't lost that form of protest, so he ate with the black workers in the domino room every day, and the the sheriff who was the Captain Fritz who was talking to him told him that well, those two guys uh, don't remember seeing you there, and Oswald says, well, how would I know they were there if I weren't there? Uh, he was seen by a woman employee who saw him there at 12:15 or 12:20. Another uh, black employee who was in a crew working on the floors of the sixth floor. He actually ate his chicken lunch in the sniper's nest, looking out the window, waiting for his buddies to come join him. And he stayed there. He stayed there till at least 12:15. Said it might have been 12:20 uh, before he went down to and met his buddies on the fifth floor to watch the motorcade. So if Oswald did shot the president, he had to have uh, set up in the sniper's nest between 12:15 or 12:20 and 12:30. So he had all of 10 minutes or less. Uh, but and then get out of there after shooting the president, walk all the way across the building to the opposite corner, walk down six or five uh, flights of stairs, uh, and then show up at the second floor lunchroom where he would put money in for a Coke, and then stand there drinking his Coke nonchalantly, uh, because the Officer Baker and Superintendent Truly got there. They say 90 seconds after the shooting. So Oswald had all of 90 seconds to get from the window he shot at down to the second floor without being seen by the two ladies coming down who
Well, I don't.
immediately
Okay, I don't believe that these ladies are reliable witnesses at all because
there's three of
I
them.
don't care how
Three.
many there are because after Kennedy was shot, everyone is freaking out. That they didn't see Oswald come down the stairs doesn't shock me at all.
Well, there were three of them. The one of them didn't come down the stairs. One of them stayed there by the stairs and saw Truly and Baker come up. So she saw two ladies go down and Truly and Baker come up, and didn't see or hear anybody else going down. That's the point. That nobody saw or heard Oswald going down those stairs, including the woman standing by the stairs, uh, while her two friends were going down.
Maybe he knew of
Right.
another way to move between floor to floor. I mean,
There was no
somebody
other way.
shot
The
the
elevator
president
was not.
from that location, right?
Yeah, that was the only way. The elevators were not working.
No, but I'm saying somebody shot Kennedy from that location. Or do you dispute that?
I don't know that. I don't think anybody's proven that. Somebody shot from a tall building. Yeah, they actually found a uh, British Enfield 303 rifle with a scope on top of that building. And there's a video taken by a local TV station of policemen bringing that rifle down by way of the fire escape on later that day. Uh, and there is, and then
So do you think
there were,
Oswald wasn't involved in the thing at all?
he had some involvement, but he wasn't a shooter. He had to, because we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but
Right.
he was, uh, he had meetings and associations with various Cuban exiles
Right.
on both stripes, pro-Castro Cubans and anti-Castro Cubans.
Right.
Um, and but we'll get to that later because it's kind of getting late.
Yeah.
But he anyway with his but let's go back to the frame issue. One thing that happened when Officer Tippit was killed.
Now, do
Uh,
you agree that Oswald killed him?
no,
Okay.
I think that that one is hard. That one's easier to defend from Oswald's standpoint because uh, it would have been impossible for him to have gotten there in time to kill him. The only way you can get Oswald nailed for that is to move the date, I mean, the time of the shooting back about 10 minutes. It was about Oswald left Oswald took a cab home, went in, changed clothes, got his revolver, and then walked towards the Texas Theater. Remember, Johnny Martino said that Oswald was instructed to meet his contact at the Texas Theater. That's where he was walking when Tippit got killed. Uh, when the cops showed up, almost immediately, there was a Captain Westbrook who was in plain clothes, basically a head of the HR department, but out investigating Tippett's murder along with others. And somebody shows up with a wallet and hands it to Westbrook. And Westbrook is there with an FBI agent named Barnett and a couple other cops. And he's flipping through the wallet and he asks, have you ever heard of somebody named Lee Oswald? What about uh, A. J. Heidel? And these are identification cards in the wallet, which are identical to the identification cards that in a wallet that Oswald was carrying when he was arrested at the Texas Theater. How'd they get the wallet?
Well, for people who don't know, I think we're going to have to back up and explain a bit more about um, how Oswald got to the book depository, how he left, how he came across Tippit or didn't, and as you're saying, he went to the theater then, and why did the police go there to arrest him? But I think we're going to have to save
Yeah,
those for next time.
we'll save you.
Let's start
But the
with that
question
next
is,
time. Yeah.
how did the cops get a wallet with Oswald's identification? Remember, they had his name had not gone out
Right.
as a suspect.
Right.
Only somebody 165
Right. They
pounds,
had a
5'10",
description, but no real identification
and
yet.
it's an description that doesn't match Oswald.
And does in some
So
respects, but not
no,
in others.
not in any
Well, the
respect.
brown wavy
5'10",
hair, I think, and he's male. So, but
yeah,
that's not much to
he's
go
male.
on. That's not much to go on.
He's yeah, but somebody, but somehow the cops got their hands on a wallet that had all of Oswald's ID, including his phony ID card in it.
All right. So we're going to get
Uh,
to that next time.
how'd that happen?
How did that happen? We're going to leave it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
To not end absolutely on a cliffhanger, I will tell people if you're ever in San Antonio, there is a museum there. What is the name of it? It is, I think, the like Ripley's Believe It or Not museum in San Antonio has the car of the guy who drove Oswald to the book depository that morning. So on the subject of cars, which we've
With
covered today.
that, his name is Wesley Buell Frazier.
Right. His
He
car
was
is there in that museum if you ever want to see it. Go ahead.
no. That's all I have.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Y'all can look that
Yep.
up. How they get the wallet?
Right. We'll see if we can answer that question next time. Okay. Thanks, Kate.
Oh, thank
All
you.
right. We'll talk to everyone later.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.